Shulman, the great Lee Shulman, thank you for being with us today.
You're very welcome, Ellie. Unfortunately, the great Lee Shulman was unable to participate, so a somewhat faded facsimile is all we could provide.
It looks as if there is a better substitute today. So the great and the modest Lee Shulman, thank you again, and shalom. You participated at the Let's Imagine conference 2 years ago, and we're doing it once again. And we, as many educators around the world, seek and look up to your advice. We are very interested to learn from you today. What would you say to educators as the world advances towards a huge technological revolution, and at the same time we're approaching an era of relative truths and extreme opinions and behaviors? What would be the most important role of education and educators towards these coming years?
You mentioned two of the factors that complicate, and that is the simultaneous growth of solid knowledge, the ways in which that development is paralleled by a growth in disinformation, in misleading information, and then of course the ways that I don't know whether the foundation has begun working with this generation of Israel students on the ways in which artificial intelligence both enhances the depth and quality of our knowledge and at the same time makes it more suspect and makes it necessary for us to be more cautious, dafka, about those forms of knowledge and information that look most reliable. So I would say the most important role of education now is to simultaneously give students the capacity to understand and use and engage with these newest of technological and scientific capacities and discoveries. And at the same time as they're learning to use them, never to reduce their skepticism about what it purports to teach them. And since you can't catch the misinformation always at first, you must, as a future thinking citizen of a democratic society, always be alert to how what you've begun to use already may be creating errors that have to be corrected even after you started using them. So it's not only skepticism, it's a high level of, what scientifically we sometimes call crap detection. I think I may have talked about this at one of our earlier meetings, but I'm particularly taken by the answer I got from a group of engineering students at the University of Michigan many years ago, when I asked them, what's an engineer? And they said, an engineer is someone who uses math and the sciences to mess with the world. And once you mess with the world, you're responsible for the mess you've made.
Yeah.
And that's the symmetry of the two responsibilities. And I think we've got to begin to model that, to tell stories about it, and to relate it to each of the new principles and concepts that we teach. And it's never, you can never do it too often, because one of the dangers of science and technology is it seems so powerful and precise that it makes us overconfident and over-reliant on its truth.
Let's talk specifically about teachers and their teaching, because you studied professions, the hearts, minds, and practice of many professions. You mentioned engineers and nurses and the clergy and others, but teachers were always at the heart of your passion and career. And you identified key features of best practice or improved practice of teachers. And as all of us are keen to assist teachers as they develop together their expertise and their practice together, what would be the tips, the highlights, the features that you would recommend in the coming years for teachers to focus on when they want to improve their practice?
Well, I would build on what I just said in some ways, and that is, since all professional practices, whether the practice is called the teaching of physics or brain surgery, use the latest forms of knowledge we have available, and at the same time, they deal with the inevitability of error. And the error may not be that we use the scientific knowledge in an errorful way, and we use it wrong, but that the consequences of using the knowledge are not yet fully understood, which is why I would say the first thing we've got to teach teachers, not only the new ones, but those who are more experienced, is to always find ways to examine and take seriously, if you will, the mess they've made. Now, very often the mess is wonderful. If I'm a cook and I make a mess called a wonderful goulash, hi, I'm a chaya. But if it's a mess in which, so often is the case in teaching, we are teaching in a manner that reaches, stimulates, inspires, and increases the insight of as much as a half of the class. That's a terrific victory. But what about the other half? And all of them are in the same class because, you know, in one of our, I think, persistent priorities, they have all qualified for the highest level, the, what is it, Chamesh Nukudot? Okay. So what is our responsibility for the other half? How do we repair that as best we can without proceeding so far and so fast with the 50% with which we succeeded, that we've left the others so far behind that they despair? And I think what makes that even more dangerous is that we as teachers, look, we have our own needs too. And one of our needs is to feel effective. I mean, there's a certain amount of what I've sometimes called pedagogical narcissism. Well, we do. We need to feel successful because that inspires and motivates us. But that it brings up the danger of only focusing on the students who learn most quickly and leaving behind the others. And I am absolutely certain that there are some of the Nobel Prize winners that were just announced the last week that didn't always get it the first time. So I would say the first thing is a high level of consciousness about who is learning and what they're learning, and who is not learning. Also, among those who are not learning, which ones are not learning in a very clever and intelligent way, such that what they're learning actually is better than what I was teaching. And I've had that happen in my, 60 years of teaching. When I say that, I shiver. So I guess it's a continuous level of self-evaluation, of self-editing. What makes that a lot easier is if we have a way in our schools of giving teachers the opportunity to observe and then debrief with colleagues. The whole notion of learning communities. Because as serious as we may be, it's very hard to see our own errors. To be able to engage the helpful assistance of a colleague, and we reciprocate as well. You know what happens very often when colleagues observe each other? They not only help correct each other's errors. I've seen in my own work and that of the teachers I work with, that sometimes what is seen as the error makes them both laugh. It really, oh my God, did I do that? What was I smoking? I mean, and they begin to laugh together. That lowers their defenses. That makes them trust each other more. Somebody ought to write a monograph on laughter and learning.
Yeah, you're right. We are approaching our final question for today, and as you know,
Oh, you mean once again I'm taking too much time with my answers?
and no, your answers were great, but we have an audience who wants you to talk to them directly because,
okay,
as you know, Israel is going through a dreadful war and an awful period. And we're talking now to a big gathering of Israeli educators who's watching you. We all pray that soon Israel will be able to heal and hope that teachers would then be the shapers of our future. What would be your message to our audience today?
you have an easier question?
No, we don't have easy questions. We are in a part of the world where nothing comes easy.
Well, since the attention of the entire nation and of those of us who love Israel all over the world, and I count myself certainly among them, one of the things that has often been observed in other countries that have been engaged in a warfare, in conflict, is that among, and this isn't the age group that you deal with, but it may still be relevant, among the most motivated, committed students who often learn so well that they can reshape the future of the country in ways that would not have been possible are returning soldiers. I mean, you were in the Israeli Armed Forces for many years. And you and I have never had a discussion directly about how your experiences provided a certain energy to your wanting to understand more, learn more, because there's nothing like a conflict to make you painfully aware of the limits of your understanding or the limits of your grasp of how to apply what you understand to new situations. And we also, I think, know that one of the reasons for Israel's continued success in the worlds of technology has come from people who, in effect, are veterans of certain important services. But I think it's not only those from intelligence and technology, those are the ones we hear most about, but also the ordinary members of the infantry and others who find themselves in situations where they realize what they don't know and how important it is. If I were at the Trump Foundation, I would see if there's anything that might be done, an initiative with returning, I guess all Israelis are returning soldiers, but this could be a group, and if there's a way to select among them, that would be ideal for giving the opportunity not only to learn things they didn't know, but to have a career in teaching those ideas. I mean, that's where it becomes a vehicle for teacher education. Because did you find those ideas valuable? What about the next generation? What can you do to help that next generation understand what you wish you had known, but simply didn't? And I guess that would be my emphasis, Ellie. And it would require perhaps a slight reworking of our mission, but it wouldn't be the first time. And since you're an example of the population I'm just making reference to, you probably have important insights to provide as well.
Lee, it's 86 years. You are, as always, the most innovative, original, entrepreneurial, creative, and youngest of all of us. We're fortunate to have you with us as a close friend of Israel for many years in our education system. And thank you for being with us today. And we wish you good health.
I dream, I almost have given up the hope, but I do dream that I will yet again, even at my advanced chronological age, have a chance to return to Israel.
Yeah.
Marhatima tova to all of you. Shalom, shalom.